You have all seen a brand new Xal'atath origin cinematic and the vision about her native world that was destroyed in her old mortal form. However, did you notice the very obvious hint that Xal'atath may have in fact been a light priestess from some ancient world that was not saved, that was abandoned by the light, which ultimately made her bitter, and it is what led to her turning into the void being that she is. We can see the conversion from her eyes from the light to the purple void. We can also connect this to so many of her old quotes, which made it obvious that she was in fact very familiar with the light. So familiar that so many people thought she used to be a Naaru. What is she really hiding? What is her true form? And what is everything we just learned? With TBC Anniversary Classic finally here, this is the perfect guide for everyone that wants to be prepared for hardcore gameplay. Rested XP gives you the most secure path from level 1 to 70 for every single class and zone. All the attunements, dailies, reputations, everything is there, from the best grinding spots to the best routes and dungeons, so that you can reach level 70 safely. Use my link below and get 10% off your order immediately. Check out Rested XP. So this is not actually news. If you guys have followed my channel, I've actually talked about this 6 months ago to nearly a year back when we first got the 11.2 PTR. Interesting enough, Xal'atath actually revealed this information that she used to be a mortal from a planet that was once destroyed in the PTR, but then 11.2 came to life. They actually removed this dialogue. Personally, I don't know why that was the case. I thought that they could have changed the lore, but it looks like they were just waiting to officially reveal this now, as Midnight is about to come in like 3 weeks, so this was probably done way too early in the PTR. So technically this was actually the case, but this cinematic confirmed even more interesting things, but at the same time I feel like it also creates a few inconsistencies with the general lore, to say the least. I gotta be honest, I really like this angle of Xal'atath being this mortal from some planet destroyed in ancient history. It does definitely make her more interesting than just being some random void being or some just inherently evil villain. Based on this, Xal'atath is something akin to Archimon that took the void instead of fell magic, although I think lore-wise the most similar character to her is actually Queen Azshara. In a way, I feel like this is like a direct parallel. If you may remember, Azshara essentially made a pact with N'Zoth and joined the void because she had no other choice. It was literally survival. Either survive as a void being or you are going to drown. This is pretty much what Xal'atath also says in this cinematic, that she learned one lesson in this universe, and that is that survival is the most important thing. Now let's actually break this cinematic down, because I think there are some really interesting potential hints that are very easy to miss that we can tie in with the previous lore. So the cinematic itself is about the leader of the Ethereals fighting the void until the last man, until Xal'atath appears in this like horror-like vision that shows him what happened to her when she did the same thing. How resistance is ultimately futile. In a way, this is kind of similar to that entire N'Zoth deal. Now it is important to keep in mind that there are two options here. I mean, she could literally just be lying and showing him some random vision that didn't even happen, but personally I doubt it. She could also just be BSing, as in he might have been able to actually resist, but I also doubt the Ethereals really had any chance in this grand fight. It is very interesting, and we can see this on multiple occasions, that Xal'atath doesn't appear to really deceive or lie. She just kinda shows you the truth from a different perspective. Of course, a very selective version of the truth, but that ends up being very convincing. This is actually very much the characteristic of the Void Realm. As we know, the light is all about one single truth, one single vision, one single reality, while the Void is the direct opposite of that. Countless possibilities, countless choices, and this is why they're such sworn enemies. They just can't coexist. While we're talking about the light, I want to mention something that is really interesting from this cinematic as well. We don't get the actual name of the planet, and we only know this happened at least over 100,000 years ago, but it does appear that Xal'atath was a light priestess from either a light planet or a regular mortal planet with light users. We can see multiple hints. First is the necklace that she has that appears to be of the sun, very much like this light emblem. The other, even more obvious hint are her eyes that obviously have a light makeup over them, and I don't think this is really even open to debate. I mean, it seems very clear the face paint is all light. The second, even more interesting hint are her actual pupils, her eyes, which also appear to be light colored, and ultimately in this cinematic, as her mortal form is destroyed, her eyes turn from this light hue into the void eyes that she currently has. Now honestly, this just connected the dots for me for that old dialogue that Xal'atath gave us when she was in the Blade, like back in Legion and BFA. Remember how she talked about the Naaru, about how they are the long lost brethren that will find a way? Do you also remember when she said, do the Naaru speak of the eternal conflict, of those that came before the Draenei? Very likely referring to her own people, the old light users that fell against the void. She also says the light would have your kind be obedient and stagnant. I offer gifts of freedom. Now, when you combine this with the brand new lore, it makes so much more sense with this additional context. It appears that she is indeed incredibly bitter and despises the light, not because she is a void being, so naturally she is against the light, but because it appears that the light had actually betrayed her. If she was indeed the light priestess and she fully believed in it, and yet her world was destroyed, it just proves that the light is in fact inferior and that the void is the true way. This is the eye color changing from the light into the void that we have seen in this new Supremacy cinematic. It is unclear what exactly the vision is and what truly happens to her. Was she ultimately converted into something else? I mean, the cinematic shows that she turned into ash, but I don't think she was really gone. I think she just shows that the void converted this planet. It wasn't just about destroying, as we can see with the eye change. She was very likely turned into a void being, and then her mortal form was reduced to ash. At that point, she became a servant of the Mencius, the Old Devouring. The removed 11.2 dialogue hinted that it was him that actually destroyed this ancient planet. Now, based on this lore, it happened over 100,000 years ago, which creates a few problems. So, the recent big lore change was that there were in fact no Void Lords. It appears that Mencius was the strongest one. He consumed multiple Void Lords along the way. Then on Kalash, Xal'atath had betrayed Mencius and she shattered him, but not properly. Instead, she just fragmented him. We ran into one of the fragments on Outland. Just now, at the end of the war with him, he was truly destroyed. It appears that since then, Xal'atath was essentially the true leading power of the void. Now, why this timeline creates a few problems is I feel like it kind of retcons the Burning Legion storyline. So in the cinematic, Xal'atath says that she planned this invasion of Azeroth for over 100,000 years, which implies her conversion into the Void happened before that. However, the creation of the Burning Legion and Sargeras' Crusade was just a bit before 25,000 years in the past, only really a quarter of that time. We know for a fact that 25,000 years ago, Sargeras needed intelligent beings and generals to lead his newly formed demon army, so he invaded Argus, which implies that this was around the early formation of the Legion. However, either this is unintended or Blizzard plans to change this lore, because it does seem like the entire Sargeras storyline is like a complete Titan fabrication. Apparently, as Sargeras had discovered void planets, like this is based on the established lore, and he learned of the Void Lords and the Old Gods, he decided he needed to destroy the universe and remake it from scratch. However, the Void Lords haven't been a thing for a really long time before that, and in fact, Mencius was shattered, Xal'atath was trapped in a blade, there really was no Void leader. It doesn't make sense that Sargeras would then decide to just go on this grand crusade to attack the Void, because the old lore implied that the Void was like at the peak of their power, and by this new lore, they haven't been at the peak of their power for hundreds of thousands of years. I'm guessing this is going to get changed, as most of the lore we know is from the Chronicle, and I've been talking about this for ages. For a really long time, the backstory of Sargeras is almost certainly BS. I think there is much more to it than we currently know. Sargeras is definitely much more than just some Titan who went mad. However, it does seem like Xal'atath's story is starting to get really interesting. We always thought it was some connection to the light. I mean, you can see how many people speculated that she was in fact a Naaru in the ancient past that was converted with the Void Cycle, which actually made sense, but it appears, based on this cinematic, that Xal'atath was in fact a follower of the light that was in a way betrayed by this light. She was lied that it was what would save her, and ultimately she realized that the Void was the only way to survive. I gotta say, I mean, this is actually very interesting. It's much more than just, you know, some crazy plotting two-dimensional entity from the Void Realm, and it would be interesting to see what they're going to do with this storyline, how it is actually going to develop. Thanks for watching. Check out my previous video on how Sylvanas is returning by clicking on the screen, and check out my brand new Witcher lore channel that I just opened by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time!